I'm Twyla.
And I'm Natalie.
And this is Twyla and Natalie.
We're going to discuss the joys and pitfalls of being a grown woman through the enlightening questions that we come up with.
I know, right? It makes us sound really smart. Like we were having deep thoughts the other day.
This is why we're always soliciting emails so we can get more ideas.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? We have to make sure we really plug that at the end of the show today. Every week on the show, we ask a question, mostly of ourselves. We usually born out of the situation we find ourselves in. And then we try to have a discussion. And hopefully that discussion is a bit of a universal discussion. You'll find something that you connect to or something you agree or disagree with. And we try to sort of come away from it with a better understanding and hopefully something that can help.
Yep.
So this week's question is how do you self-medicate?
This is a moving target for me,
isn't it? I mean, and I won't lie, it's a bit of a loaded question. Like
yeah.
when we thought about it and we were discussing it, I knew it had the potential to be a little bit controversial, but
gather around, children, gather around.
Yeah, but the more we had a discussion maybe a couple weeks ago about this, and it was very top of mind in that we all seem to do something.
Yeah,
there's
something. That. There's something. There's anything that you do, and this is how I identify it. Anything, when you're trying to not deal with somebody. No,
that wasn't Freudian at all.
Where you're covering it up, you're not dealing with it, you're medicating it. If you injured your knee and you have pain, you can take some ibuprofen to help take the pain away. That's a medication. That's a proper use of medication. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're talking about is, when are you using something in the way in which it's not supposed to be used, and you're using it as medication.
Yeah, and sometimes using something in excess can,
exactly.
hits that definition. By no means are we necessarily we're not talking very specifically about things that are abused in terms of drugs, alcohol, things like that. Like in terms of going from use to overuse to problematic behavior. That's a topic for somebody far more qualified than us.
Yeah, but at the same time, if that is it, I mean, if I'm going to be completely honest, and I will, and for me, I was medicating with alcohol. I didn't drink most of my adult life. I had some, binge drinking at times in my teenage years. Mm-hmm. But from that time I was, say, about 17 actually, till I was almost 40, I hardly ever drank. Mm-hmm. And I started drinking when I was about 39, 40. And had a beautiful 7-year love affair with wine and vodka. And it was only recently that I actually quit drinking because of my autoimmune issues. This is kind of what brought it to the forefront. Mm-hmm. Alcohol is incredibly inflammatory. And when you have autoimmune issues, be it rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's like I do, or even MS, anything that causes inflammation is horrible for you, and it brings into play your autoimmune disorder.
Right.
So for me, eating a very, low inflammation or anti-inflammatory diet is important. But it wasn't enough. I needed to stop drinking because I love my wine. Mm-hmm. And whether it was 1 glass or it was 3 glasses or it was 5 glasses, it was damaging my system and causing problems with my immune system. So I quit drinking. And thankfully, my man who I'm with quit with me in solidarity. And since then, I've done a lot of reflection about it and have realized, because even my doctor had said, after, you heal your gut, and after several months, you can have a glass of wine once in a while. And I thought, well, okay. And I've really been looking at it a lot and realized I'm not that person who can have a glass of wine once in a while.
Well, and I think that's I think that's a large distinction to be able to make, because
exactly.
we've talked about the idea that, I think, funnily enough, you and I were in the same boat from that exact time period that you talked about.
Yeah.
I drank very, very little in that time frame as well. It just wasn't a thing for me.
Sure.
We had lots of social drinkers in our family, social drinkers among my friends. I was always the sober buddy because I just wasn't interested in it. And when I hit, when I hit my late 30s, early 40s, I started to at least want to have...
When your kids become old enough to call 911.
Girl, there is a direct correlation
Even
to
better
their
if one of them
level.
can drive.
Yeah. But you start to kind of, I remember thinking I wanted to have a passable knowledge of things because I was doing enough adult activities that when somebody asked me what I wanted to drink, I'd be like, do you have cranberry juice? I just felt I just wanted to, and part of it was social. I just wanted to be able to fit in a little bit better, or I wanted to have a better understanding of, if we went to have a nice dinner and they were pairing it with the wine, I just wanted to understand it better, but I could still take it or leave it.
Yeah.
So it was, it's one of those things where you do have to know what you can handle of it, in terms of, and I think that's part of the when you're defining out self-medicating is when you think you're handling something by engaging in a certain activity.
Yeah, there's a difference between drinking, like you're saying, when you're in a social situation, or drinking when I started drinking is when I actually was leaving the cult, when I left Scientology and was doing so much more. Your life when you're in Scientology or a controlling group or anything similar, your world is very isolated.
Right.
You're not doing a lot with a lot of other people. When I started, reaching out in my community, becoming more involved with other people, even, Twyla and I were in radio together and we had to do things publicly. It took me years to realize I had some social anxiety, some anxiety in general. And I found out really quickly that a glass of wine settled that. So for me, I was medicating my anxiety and dealing with everything I was dealing with too, with leaving a cult and trying to figure out for the first time who I am.
Right.
That really messes with your head, and dealing with a lot of the abuses that went on. Drinking was a way of kind of quieting those things down. So I was medicating with alcohol. I didn't know it then, and I know it now.
Right, but you were doing
from the beginning
because it kind of helps. It dulls the edges of that feelings that you're having. So it kind of helps them recede and put them in the back of your head.
Absolutely. Within a 2-year period, I left the cult I grew up in. My mom died, and I got a divorce.
Yeah, you had a lot. You had a lot going on.
What better time to start drinking alcohol?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it became then habitual. It became a habit. It became so easy to do, and something that I just did. I wasn't sloppy all the time.
Well, isn't that kind of one of the hallmarks of whatever it is you're using to self-medicate, is that it's habitual? And I think a lot of people, some people are listening and they're thinking it doesn't relate to them because they don't drink. I'm here to tell you that there are other ways to have habitual behaviors that you don't realize you're having. I think a lot of us do what I did very early on when I had children and I was feeling isolated. I had moved back to an area and, got a new house and had babies in the house like within 18 months of each other. And it was really just me and babies all day, 8 to 10 hours a day with no other real adults to come into contact with in the beginning. I remember really becoming sort of obsessed with the television I was watching and just being absorbed in it all day long, outside of, if I wasn't taking care of the kids or I was on quote unquote break from the kids.
I thought you were going to say and that is when my porn addiction started.
No, it wasn't quite that severe.
But you were escaping into
I was totally escaping into this other
TV.
place. Yeah. My friends, when I had babies, my friends were the people on the television. Oprah was still on. She was my friend.
Yeah.
The soap operas that I just never cared about my whole life became like a thing. Yeah. And I would call my mom and be like, Mom, is Victor always this bad? I was becoming really drawn into what was happening. And it was almost like, because it was the world happening around me. So I was very much, I would be sitting and just absorbing it. And I had, crazy feeding schedules with the kids, and I needed to kind of be able to be up and awake and alert. So I would do, I'd be up at 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, continuously nursing and, watching, be it an infomercial or a Lifetime movie or whatever it was.
Was it interfering? Because, we're talking about what you may have done or you're doing that is self-medicating.
Yeah. How are you self-medicating?
So was it interfering with your life? Because I always like to think of anything we're self-medicating, be it alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. If it's causing a problem in your life, you have a problem with that thing.
Yes.
And for me, if alcohol's causing a problem in my life, I have a problem with alcohol.
Yes.
Whatever it is. Was it causing a problem in your life? Because you think at first, watching TV, what's so bad about that?
Yeah, I think it started to later on when it felt like it was taking attention away from my husband.
Yeah.
Or it was taking attention away from us, sort of spending together time as a unit.
Sure,
we'd be all in the same room, but we'd be a little disconnected while we're in that room.
Yeah.
And my husband will still tell you to this day, if I'm hyper focused on something, I kind of tune everything else out.
Yeah.
So I will get everything done I need to get done. Like my kids are okay. If dinner's been fed, everybody's had their bath, everybody's cool, whatever. And if I'm like sitting in front of like whatever it is I'm watching or whatever, because I this is the time I said I was taken out for me to do this.
Yeah.
Because I'm good at compartmentalizing it. He would get frustrated that he would be calling my name somewhere in the house and I just wouldn't, I wouldn't hear him. Sure. And he would come up and be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm watching my show. Why are you here? I'm watching my show. Yeah. And he'll be like,
now, was this back before the DVR where you could pause this live television?
Yes, and even the DVR. Listen, the DVR is still a thing for us because the DVR was bought for me as a gift because it was a problem. And it was like, okay, now you can manage it. But now, to this day, even with me having a better handle on it and not sort of indulging in it as much, it's still like, babe, we're at like 10% capacity on the DVR. Can we get rid of things? No. Whose DVR is it? Is it yours? No, I put these things on here so that when I can get to them and it's not it's not distracting to you. Like I put a whole season on here so that when I need to do laundry and it's just me, I can get through that season. Yeah, you don't get to erase anything off my DVR. Your UFC fight is never going to be as important as a full season of whatever thing I'm watching.
That's right. Now, when you would do that though, or would you turn to it? Would you turn to television, these shows, when you're upset or stressed or?
I will say that I used to...
What were your triggers? I'm curious about that.
My triggers were always, I'm like when I would be overtired and I should probably just be laying down to rest. But my mind would kind of be racing with things and thoughts and ideas and things that I needed to put somewhere. If I wanted to quiet those, I would tend to go to the TV and watch something that's just mindless and silly. Yeah. Like I still do that to this day. I don't go to bed watching heavy news. Yeah. I go to bed having watched, piece of a late night show or a comedy that I DVR'd or something that.
Yeah, for me it's Frasier or The Golden Girls.
Yes, something like that where where you just kind of can shut your brain off for a little bit and really I should probably just go to bed and like let myself fall asleep.
Yeah, because there's a lot of studies that talk about how we shouldn't actually watch TV before we go to sleep, and I'm guilty of it as well.
Yeah, even the screens and taking in the images and stuff. Yeah, see, and I'm the worst because I will do the television until it kind of like I'm calmed my brain down. Yeah. Then I'll say, okay, I'm going to bed. But on the path to bed, I'll go to the bathroom, I'll brush my teeth, and I'll accidentally sort of wake myself back up instead of being in a good state of tiredness. Yeah. I'll get into bed and then say, okay, I'll read for a few minutes. That's never, okay. And I know that's the biggest lie ever told. That's the lie I tell myself, that I'm going to read for a couple minutes. Because I don't ever read for less than an hour. I'm a reader. I love books. There's no book that isn't my friend. Yeah. Almost no. Well, there's a couple, but for the most part, I love them. So if I'm laying down and it's time to really quiet myself down, and I pull out a book. No, you'll just ask me what time do you go to bed, 1 or 2? Because that's me.
Do you think, and again, because this is so top of mind for me, because I've recently stopped drinking and I've been looking at the reasons, what my triggers were for drinking or how I used alcohol. And it was very similar to what you're saying. And it would just kind of calm me down. Mm-hmm. It would take the edge off. I would chill out a bit. And so I've been asking myself, okay, well, what can I do? Because now obviously I'm not going to be drinking. Yeah. And
that's kind of big, being able to replace it. But
it is about, I think, replacing it, but not replacing it with another behavior that would be medicating. Like, now is not the time for me to get into meth. Not that there ever is a time. Yeah. I'm really interested in what people do. And, I've been reading more about even meditation and that really is a calming of the mind. And I gotta be honest, the idea of doing it freaks me out because there's something about being quiet. And I think you and I are similar that way. So I think it would be a good challenge for us to find, and from my understanding, and I'm no expert on meditation. Like I said, I just started reading a book by the Dalai Lama. It's just that quieting of your mind, that quiet space, not thinking about the past, not thinking about, the future. And from what I have read, it's supposed to help you kind of settle. Yeah. And be in that more peaceful space. Exactly. But again, I think they call it that's why it's called a meditation practice, is because you have to practice it. But I think you and I both, and at night too, if I can't sleep in the middle of the night, I'm embarrassed to admit I sleep with my iPad and I'll plug in Frasier. I won't watch it. I'll turn it on. I'll put my earbuds in and I get back to sleep within about 10 minutes. Now, interestingly, since I quit drinking, I'm sleeping amazingly well, but that's what I would do.
Yeah. See, now I've always, I think there came sort of transitions occurred that allowed me to, go, okay, this thing I can put aside for now. I would say probably of the habitual things that I know I use to sort of self-medicate and self-soothe. Like I said, television was a big one for a long time.
Yeah.
And then like I said, we had a job where we had to traffic in watching television and stuff all the time. So it was just like,
that was our job.
Yeah. But I was able for the most part to let that go because then I didn't have to kind of feel like I needed to track or have my finger in the, on the pulse of everything all the time.
Sure.
But I know that I still tend to do, I'm a sugar eater. I've always been a sugar eater. So, I've almost never met a piece of candy I didn't like. So a big thing that helped me kind of break that, was changing my eating habits. I went vegan about 1.5 years ago.
Yep.
And I was always a chocolate eater. And you can't really do that when you're vegan because I liked milk chocolate. So
you can have chocolate with the milk in it.
Yeah. I can have like that dark bitter stuff, which, was never my friend. I always felt like that was the devil's candy. That was a punishment when I was young.
When you're smart to have done that too, because it often happens when you are dealing with one addiction, whatever it is you're addicted to or what you're self-medicating with, that it's easy to open the door to another one. And I did the same thing where I try to eat paleo, and in stopping drinking, that's a lot of sugar. Alcohol turns it's sugar, and you're taking that away. And my cravings for things that were sweet got a lot stronger. So I had to learn how to make paleo fudge.
Right. You have to kind of learn how to navigate because like I said, there's still a lot of candies that I liked to eat that I can still eat. There's surprisingly a large number of candies.
So you can eat sugar, but like for the way I eat, I don't eat processed sugar. I'll eat something with I make it with maple syrup is how I make the
right. And there's a lot of cheats, like things like Sour Patch Kids are actually vegan. So
Oreos are vegan.
Yeah. Oh, girl.
Yeah, and they're horrible.
Learned that early on. But that's the kind of thing you have to you try to keep in mind when you're shifting sort of within it. I know I'm constantly, and I guess I'll ask this. Do you ever find yourself, or have you ever found yourself feeling like you're rolling into an activity that you don't want to be habitual and sort of catching yourself before it becomes habitual?
Yeah. With some things, I saw that it took me a long time to even realize I was doing it with the drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm such a, I'm Polynesian, we are party people, everything is just festive. I'm always celebrating something, and it's just fun. And our lifestyle and what I do for a living is very conducive for happy hours and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, it was habitual. And then for a while I thought, well, it's just habit. It's my lifestyle. And then I would go in for my annual physical, and the doctor, and I was honest about how much I drank.
Yeah.
And he'd say, hey, more than one drink a day is considered putting yourself in a higher risk as a female for heart disease and even for types of cancer. So it's an easy kind of like, it's an easy thing to see, I think, when we talk about a habit or medicating with alcohol, because it's so bad for you in excess.
Right. So
but other habits,
they're not necessarily bad for you unless you really push them too far. Like I said, I can.
Yeah, and I've been there with the sugar, which is why I strive to work paleo. It's dealing with another thing, and Twyla, I'm kind of like having an aha moment.
Oh yay!
They say they say. Because again, I've been doing a lot of reading about this.
Yeah.
It's, it's our brains. We are, you have an addictive personality. You're addicted even say alcohol, not because of alcohol, but because you're wired that way.
Oh, the idea of you being sort of biologically wired to be more
prone to be have an addictive personality.
Yeah. To like when you get into something, you just can't pull back from it.
And I've been there with, when I was in the cult. I remember I didn't drink so much then. Really hardly ever, but Culver's with a shake. That was my calm down. It was the food. It was junk food and sugar. Medicated hugely with food.
Oh, I remember having we used to have like a whole tradition in our family built around it's a rough week. It's Friday, and we'd go get French fries. And that would make us, we would just kind of shake off the week with that. But I would do
the Oreos in bed. I would be in bed, and I'm talking like at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, with a whole package of Oreos, a glass of milk, and I would just eat a sleeve, dipping every Oreo. If I stopped at a sleeve, it was a good night.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was I could feel myself calm down and relax. And when I stopped doing that and picked up a glass of wine, I realized the wine did the same thing.
Oh, okay. I got you.
And it was less calories.
Yeah. And listen, we'll find a way to cheat around these calories if we think we're getting the thing we think we need out of it.
I started drinking, actually lost weight.
See, and that's, and I think sometimes that plays into it, too. Like I'll be honest. I was like, when my kids were little, and I'd be stressed out about something, whatever it is, because part of what happens in that transition of having kids, especially if you decide to be the one who stays at home, is you lose a lot of footing that you had already established for yourself as an adult. All of a sudden, I wasn't making my own money anymore. Yeah. All of a sudden, I wasn't able to dictate how I spent my time. It was dictated by what they needed first and what we needed to do after that. So there was a lot of, that isolation also came with sort of, I have a real full readjustment of who am I right now in the space that I'm in, especially because this wasn't something I had pursued. I've been really open before about the idea that I'm super grateful for my children. I love them dearly. And this is really going to be the coolest job I ever get, is to be their mom. But it wasn't a job I sought out. I didn't grow up saying I want to have children. I had children because I met a man who really loved kids. And I went, oh, he'll take care of them. And I got lucky that my brain shifted and said, no, you want to take care of them because they're great. But that was a very large shift for me. I never had to plan to be off of a track or to be, at home with children. And so then it was like, who am I now? Yeah. And sometimes
fulfilling that.
Yeah. That there was kind of a stress that came from like not really even knowing who I was for a while. Yeah. And sometimes the best way to ease that stress was like a handful of hot tamales, after everybody went to bed, or
nothing says I feel calm like Swedish fish.
Yeah. And and even now I catch myself late at night and everybody's gone to bed and I'm just like, oh, I'm hungry. And I'm like, I'm not hungry. Something's bugging me. So whatever it is, either pull out your journal.
You're craving, but you're not hungry.
Yeah. I would I always make myself like drink a cup of tea or something or a cup of hot water. Yeah. I'll go brush my teeth again to reinforce the laziness of not wanting to brush my teeth a third time. Yeah. Or I'll pull out my journal or I'll pull out some work and kind of find somewhere else for that energy to go, because it's really just an energy that you need to kind of settle in with and just go figure out what is it? What is, like sometimes you just have to dig into it and go, okay, what is this?
Yeah. And it's interesting you said that, being when your life plan, you didn't think you were going to have kids, and that changed. Yeah. And it changed the core, made you question who you were that time with your kids. And I think it's interesting to look at it and go, look at where you come from with your reasons for questioning who you are. Mine, was being in a cult, but really we were going through the same thing.
Yeah. Like sometimes you get to a point where you just, everything you think you understand about yourself becomes void.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be a cult, and it doesn't need to be, whatever it is for you. I think that's interesting. And so, if we're dealing with this and the way that we've decided and went about medicating ourselves, how many other women are dealing with those things?
And I've seen people, I've had girlfriends who, shop.
Excess.
And even, and I remember having a point in time as my kids got older and a little more independent, being really excited to be able to go out in public.
Oh my God, I loved going to Target.
Oh yeah.
When my kids were little.
Yeah. And you don't just, nobody just walks around Target. You buy things. And then it becomes kind of a pattern of what do you buy and how do you,
to fill that void.
Yeah. And you even
there are 12-step programs for shoppers. Right. Shopaholics Anonymous is a real thing.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's so many different things, like whether it's people that, collect things, or whether it's people that,
and again, it's in excess. It's interfering. Are you not paying bills because you're buying Beanie Babies?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's kind of that piece of it. The idea of, if you're using this activity, and I always tell people, just stop and think of it this way. If this activity is bringing you the kind of joy, fulfillment, or happiness, or, happiness hormone that you would be getting from something else, what's the something else that you want instead?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when we're talking about, again, medicating to get through that, whatever it is, because all of these activities, there's nothing wrong with them in and of themselves.
Right.
Alcohol in moderation, shopping in moderation, eating in moderation. None of these are bad.
Right.
It's when you're using it to medicate and you're doing it in excess and it's creating problems in your life. And I think when we stop and go, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve?
Yeah. I always say I said the easiest way to find it, if it might be a bit of a problem for you, is ask if you need it. When you say, oh, I need this.
Yeah.
You know, like I remember when I first decided to change my eating habits permanently.
Yeah.
A big thing was, how am I ever going to stop eating cheese? Like I love cheese. And I mean, I loved it in a way that was not rational, you know, like it just wasn't, it didn't make any sense. And then I just kept realizing like there was something I'm getting out of eating certain foods, just like there was something that felt comforting.
Yeah. And there's science to back this up. The way our brain chemistry responds to sugar, to alcohol, to these things.
Yeah. And now I try
physical.
And honestly, I try very hard now. I used to keep a little card in my wallet, you know, like kind of like all of the Dave Ramsey school of thought of what are the things I needed to pay for, because for me, money wasn't ever abundant for us, and the idea of being in debt just was a concept that it felt like everybody had to be forever.
Yeah.
So I used to keep a card of the things that cost us the most that we just wanted to not have debt on.
Yeah.
And that if I was going to buy something excessive or unnecessary, I would pull that card out and go, yeah, no, my mortgage is more important than this cup of coffee today. You know, or my school debt is more important than these cute shoes on sale, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to figure out how to do that for myself in terms of the things that were habitual for me. If it was me sitting down in front of the TV for an hour to watch the show, I didn't really need to watch it. It's just something is stressing me out and I want to turn my brain off for a while. Okay, well, if I'm going to turn my brain off for a while, when am I going to turn it off towards? You know, if I'm going to, now this thing can play in the background, but now I need to do an hour of exercise to go with it.
Sure.
Or I need to do the laundry while I'm doing it. Or I need to turn it off and go walk the dog. Like sometimes
for a walk.
Yeah, I've gotten better at saying this today it feels like a crutch. I don't want it to be a crutch.
Yeah.
And that is a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to understand. And part of it is just sort of getting honest with yourself and going, how am I using this?
Yeah, this being honest with yourself stuff is incredibly, it's
like
so vulnerable.
Listen,
you know?
I like lying to myself all the time. Nobody's prettier. Nobody's more confident.
I totally have it together.
Yes.
I am perfect.
I always tell people I'm the bestest of the bestest. Don't you worry about that. I truly actually do believe in that concept of fake it till you make it. Sometimes you need to pump up your own ego because other people won't do it until you feel good enough that you don't need to do that all the time. That's fine. But don't pump up your ego and sort of have this sort of false narrative about yourself that says, I can eat 5 boxes of candy a day and
never get diabetes.
Yeah, and never get fat. Like that's like when I joke with my friends a lot in the summer when we're having like a dinner out or something. They'll be like, I shouldn't have dessert. And I'm like, oh, summer calories don't count. That's just me, that's just me being kind of facetious and fun. And at the holidays, I say that all the time. I always go, holiday calories don't count, just because I don't want you to be stressed out at a holiday. This is one occasion. Have fun at this occasion.
Yeah.
The next occasion, maybe don't eat 3 slices of cheesecake. That's fine. That's your choice. And
a lot of times you have a couple bites and you're really like kind of done, when you realize like, that's good.
Yeah, see, us sugarholics never.
Yeah. But that's the point, is recognizing it. And that's how I think, if you have a problem with something, is the inability to stop. Yeah. And I would think for years, I thought, well, my drinking's not a problem because I'm not sloppy. But there were times when I was sloppy.
Yeah.
You know what? The lie I told to myself was, well, I'm not sloppy. That wasn't true. I was a responsible drinker in that I made sure I wasn't driving.
Yeah. Okay.
And that somehow justified me getting wasted.
Okay. And I will totally tell. Like we go back. Yeah, we go back far enough. We would have these occasions where the two of us would show up together as a unit and represent ourselves in our show. And you were always thoughtful about, like, you had the plan, like X person is coming with you, they're driving, you're doing this is, even sometimes like if we had to talk at something, you would be like, okay, I need to take the early part, you take the late part, you would have it all planned out. Like there was nobody that was more sort of thoughtful about the process of how an evening, like you would have the evening broken down into parts. Like you would even know, like, past this time of day, I'm going to be useless to you.
Yeah.
So you should know that. And then we'll move on from there.
Yeah. No, that's no joke.
Even how you were going to exit. Because sometimes, sometimes she would stealth me. I'd be like, we're in this together, right? And she'd be like, okay, we're going to go. And I'm like, no, we agreed. Oh, I thought we were gonna, but you always did have like a really good plan.
I always had a plan, and I always had someone who would kind of help me keep an eye on my behavior. And if I started seeming like I was getting too intoxicated, that was the time to leave. And that whole time, the lie to myself was that my drinking is under control because I'm not creating a scene, because I'm not doing this.
Yeah, because you put all these safeguards into place.
I put all these safeguards.
Yeah.
I was a responsible drunk, you know, and that is a lie. I shouldn't have to. I mean, it's a good thing I did. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a more forethought than a lot of people have about the situation.
Totally. But I shouldn't have to. You know, it should be. And now that's been the great thing. And you want to hear something funny? Now not drinking and we've had some family events and my adult children and things over, and I've had my kids even stop by, and my daughter actually thought I had relapsed and was drinking again because of my behavior. She stopped by. We live on the water, and she stopped by on a boat with some friends, and I went to my sister. My sister called me, you know, how you doing? And I'm like, okay, I'm not drinking. She's like, really? Because Kelsey said you flashed her friends on the boat.
And that's
I'm
just like,
what?
That's
I'm like,
just
I did
you.
not. Because she said you were wearing a very, very sheer outfit and everyone could see your boobs. I said, number one, they showed up unannounced. Number two, I don't wear a bra when my stepkids aren't home. Right. Number three, I live on the water. It was a beach cover up and it was sheer.
Okay.
But it was black. You couldn't see through it.
Right.
So I had to call my daughter and be like, hey, just so you know, that's me sober.
Right.
You know?
Like, just hold the phone for a second. Calm down.
She's like, yeah, you're laughing and doing all this. So it's interesting to have the people around me learn and come to learn that a lot of times that behavior wasn't because I was drinking. That's just me.
Right. And that I think that's part of it. I think that's a really big part of it too, is that when people feel like they're giving up habitual behaviors because of this feeling,
you're scared it's going to change who you are.
Yeah. Or you're scared that it's going to make you a less happy person or a less pleasant person, because these are things that you use to make yourself feel better. And if you're not using them, how are you going to feel? And I would say the most important part of that is really examine what the feeling was you're trying to get out of them, and figure out how to manufacture that in your own life in a way that isn't dependent on that.
That's why I'm looking into, like I said, I've been reading the book about meditation, because from what I read, it helps to calm your mind. And for me, that's what I was seeking. You know, with my autoimmune issues, I often have my heart races. My resting heart rate can be 120. And that makes you feel your fight or flight reflex really kicks in.
Right.
So it would add to my anxiety. And that just taking that quiet time, you know, I think even though still today, even the idea sometimes is just mortifying. I don't know why. For me, the idea of it being, I can't even sleep if it's quiet. I have to have a fan on or something.
Yeah, well, some people, and that's the thing, some people are like, I can't sleep with anything that I can hear is a distraction for me. And because I tune into it, want to know what's going on. So I can't listen to music when I sleep because I just want to hear the lyrics. I can't listen. I can almost never fall asleep in front of a television unless it's something I've seen before or I don't care about at all. And then it's like, okay, then because my brain is always kind of engaged at the front of, hey, what's going on? Let's process it. How can we use this? What's going on? You know, and that's for me, a lot of the times when I felt like this, or I felt like I was using something habitually, it was because there was a sense of satisfaction I wasn't getting somewhere else. And for me, a lot of times satisfaction is either completing something or sort of closing the loop on something. So then I started to make sure that what activities bring me that sense. You know, I don't always get that sense of satisfaction from exercising as much as I'd like to.
Yeah, God, I would love to become addicted to exercise.
Yeah, like that's not going to be my life. But I do get that sense of satisfaction from work. And I had been away from working for a long time. I get that sense of satisfaction from volunteering, but I'm not good with sort of open-ended volunteering, like just showing
till the end of time.
Yeah, I like projects. Yeah, so I'll take on someone, you know, a project at my kid's school. I run the readathon. It takes about 4 months. Happens every year like clockwork. It's challenging in places. It's, you know, it's feel good because I'm getting to do something and help somebody and
see a result.
Yeah, there's a tangible result. I am a results person. So doing that was honestly, I remember the first time I took that on, I was kind of terrified of it. And when I finished it, I felt so good about it. And it automatically took away some of the like nightly, you know, like that. I would get like this nightly like sugar craving and be like, I want to have some chocolate. I'm just having this. When I was doing that activity, that just didn't happen. I was going to bed seemingly more exhausted.
Sure.
But it was really because my brain was able to let go of the idea that I didn't accomplish something in whatever form. Mm-hmm. So then I could relax. And when I could relax, my brain could say, hey, you know what? You're actually tired. Go to bed.
Well, that makes sense because, raising children is a long-term activity.
Yes.
So when you talk about when you became a stay-at-home mom and you felt that isolation, I could see how maybe you didn't feel you were getting that same as if you had a job outside the home and you were doing projects and having that even acknowledgement and recognition. It's a long-term thing with
you
your
don't.
kids.
Yeah, the long con with having kids is you won't know you've gotten it right
though they're adults.
And until it is far too late to correct the behavior. So if you get it right, hopefully you'll be able to do simple things like see your own grandkids or have somebody tell you one day, Happy Mother's Day, Mom, I bought you flowers.
Not have to show up at a parole hearing.
Yeah, you know, you won't know. And so a lot of it in the everyday is just hoping you get it right every day, hoping you. And there's an
uncertainty.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of flashes of like, okay, my kid's got good manners. I feel better about that. But it still doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't address the long term, which is, are they good humans? Are they good people? Will they go out in the world and do good things? Will they, if you're, and I used to joke about this, but it was really never a joke. The idea of there's the difference between raising a solid citizen and a serial killer is inches, not miles. Yeah. So if you think you do everything right, and then you see on the news that, this parent did everything right, the best they could, and their kids still went and shot up a school. Their kids still went and, robbed a bank or whatever it is. There's always that little ball of like, uncertainty of, oh, I hope I'm doing this right. Yeah. I hope I'm doing everything that I can do because this is the most I can do. Yeah. And so sometimes I needed to have something that was just like, oh, this is complete. There's a bow on it. Yeah. You're done. This is accomplished.
It helped you to lower that feeling. And again, it kind of goes back to that anxiety. It's a fear. There's not a car coming at you. If the car is coming barreling at you and you feel that fear, that's fear and a valid, fear. It's there. Yeah. Anxiety is, I'm not going to walk down the road because there could be a car. A car could hit me. Yeah. That for me has always been the difference between what, I recognize as this is a factual fear that has relevancy and I should deal with versus anxiety. Is there actually there's not a car in sight, yet I'm still terrified this car is going to come barreling at me.
Yes. And I think that's even another, we'll have to put that on our list of topic questions. Cause I think sometimes when you walk through life, if you have kind of a survivor's mentality,
PTSD.
Yeah. It changes the way that you even approach your everyday. Like we used to make that joke about the zombie apocalypse all the time, where you'd be like, I'm gonna be all ready, and I would always say, don't worry, y'all, I'll let them eat me first because I'm not running that fast. I don't know if I want to live in a world full of zombies. So I mean, when the time comes, I will just jog. But even that I think kind of shifts the the way you approach things and kind of how you even process sort of those kinds of feelings translates into what you do to kind of help yourself get through, past, over, or deal with them.
And a lot of it, it is, I recognize and for me, having grown up in a cult and in an environment at times that was abusive and not in the best interest of a child, I do find myself, and I joke a ton about the zombie apocalypse, but interestingly, I read so many zombie apocalypse books, and it's my favorite type of movie. Anything apocalyptic.
This is true.
I gravitate to it. And I think because part of me and my upbringing, I was such a survivalist, not in the way of I know how to take care of myself in the wild. I do not. I'm going to need help there. Yeah. But in that, when I'm in that survival mode, my sister and my brother-in-law would always tease me. We would travel together, and I would always have to have a bag. They called it my go bag. Yeah. Packed. I couldn't put my stuff in the back of the car. My bag had to be next to me. Oh yeah. I was always ready to run, take off, flee, survive, whatever it was.
And that's why. Remember the first time that we went out together. The very first time I met you before our show even started. We went to have dinner at a restaurant. You were sitting right next to the door, and you had your back to the windows. And I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you took that seat because I never sit without being able to have eyes on the door." Yeah. And eyes on who's coming in, because that was my mom raised us to be like, know your exits, know how to get out, always know. And like, so it wasn't something we understood when we were little, but we found out as we got older that's how my grandfather was killed. And he was in a bar, and somebody walked in and just kind of started shooting. So he didn't, it was my mom's head that translates to always know your exit so you know how to get out.
That's right.
Always be able to, and I'm like that everywhere. Yeah, I'm like that. I'm like that everywhere. I'm like that in a movie theater. I'm like that in the, in a public place. Like I know where all the exits are in the Mall of America. Like I even know where the secret ones are that y'all don't know.
And in today's world, unfortunately, there's more of a reason to have that. But as an overall, especially some years ago, it does. You can see how the things that happen.
But see, even that's kind of habitual. Like for us, that's habitual.
It's hard to let it go. And for me, I pride myself on, okay, we're going to the beach. All right. I'm not going to pack, as if the zombie apocalypse is going to hit while we're out.
Right.
I'm going to not have this thing, even not making my bed, which has nothing to do with anything really, but it's being able to let that go.
Yeah.
And go, or the fact that the other day I actually forgot because I was busy and I was like, wow. And I was so excited.
Yeah.
I forgot to make
something.
My bed.
Yeah.
I don't have to make something be completely prepared. It's that idea of having to be completely prepared.
Well, see, and that's, like I said, that is even a part of this discussion.
I should have been a Girl Scout.
You really should have. I was a Girl Scout. You would have been a good Girl Scout. You're much better than me. Much, much better than me. But even the idea of something as simple as the notion of preparedness, which isn't a habitual, which isn't something
that's bad.
That's a substance or something. But you can get yourself completely over. You may be overindulging in the activity.
Interferes with your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and that's. There's so many different ways. So I guess this kind of brings us back to the question: how are you self-medicating? Did we answer that question?
I think we do. For me, like I said, it was food, and then it became alcohol, and now I'm really working on finding, healthy ways to deal with whether it's some anxiety or whatever it is and not do that. And it's an everyday thing. Okay, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What can I do? Learning to go for a walk, herbal tea, do other things that are not somehow combating, whether it's a stimulant or something to relax me. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to do that. My goal, my challenge to myself is to find ways to do that without an exterior medication for myself, but to find that whatever that piece is that I'm looking for, and I don't even have it all figured out yet, to be able to do that myself.
I like that. I think I've been spending a lot more time trying to examine activities that I engage in and the ways that I think about things.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of asking that question, if we're, are we self-medicating, is what are the things that you're doing in your life to make up for the feelings you're not getting? Mm-hmm. Maybe even sit down and take some time to figure out what your feelings are. Like, do you feel, if you're feeling, companionship, if you're feeling love, if you're feeling supported, then there are things you just wind up not needing because you have that there. But if you're not feeling those things, if you're feeling anxious, if you're not feeling safe, dig into why you don't feel that way so you can figure out what it will take to feel that way so that you're not necessarily leaning on, say my secret stash of candy or, the go bag or whatever
or even putting the ownership on somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, nobody is going to do this for you.
Which is probably a show for another day.
That's
absolutely.
Right.
As well.
Because when the zombie apocalypse comes and you're living by yourself.
You can't be complaining about your husband when he got eaten by the zombies.
That's right.
It's not fair. So as always, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what you think. We want to hear your opinions. How do you self-medicate? Do you think that self-medicating is actually a thing? Is it a concept? Go to the Facebook page. Go to Matriarch Digital Media and hit the send message option. It's on the right-hand side. Email the show. Just hashtag it Twyla and Natalie so that we know you're talking about us. And we want your feedback. Eventually, we are going to do a fun mailbag show where we kind of go over all the people saying that we're crazy, because I love an opportunity to do that, and we want to be able to share that with you as well. So as always, we appreciate you listening, we appreciate you participating, and we appreciate you being a part of the show. So thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.